Hello, welcome to this weekly episode of URC Unloaded with myself, Stephen Ferris, and we've got someone new today. I mean, I don't know how you, Fez, but I've doubted Barclay's commitment right from the start. He's a gun for hire, like a nagging issue in the back of my head about how much he wants to do this. Like he's basically just jumped ship, hasn't he? He's gone with his Six Nations friends now.
I think you're right, Shanks. It'd be interesting, like if Tommy has a good outing today, then he might be hard to replace. So, I think is Barclay down in London mixing it with all the Six Nations crowd, is he?
Don't know, don't care. There's always an issue, isn't there? Wi-Fi, camera, light, and he left the microphone in the log house. He's a mercenary.
That's right, yeah.
He's a mercenary.
Right.
He's upset quite a few people here as well. So it don't matter anyway, because it's like one of the boys when they get capped, isn't it? They upgrade.
That's it, mate. I'm off the bench now. I'm excited.
Like
the game, lads.
Like we have done. Tommy Seymour, as I live and breathe. How are you?
How are we, fellas? I'm good. Thank you. Very happy to be here. Thanks for Barks for, I suppose, donning a Six Nations cap and giving me an opportunity to sit down with you two fellas.
Is that like a is that a computer background, or is that actually?
No, this is my. Listen, mate. My son has been taken up at the moment, so I couldn't get in mine tonight, Shank. So no, I'm in my. I'm in the quiet room at the end of the house at the in-laws. Thank you.
Pop round your nan's house, I was going to say. But I didn't want to offend you, so I didn't.
Mother-in-law, mate. You can deal with my mother-in-law.
How have you been? What have you been up to since you retired?
Yeah, not an awful lot, Shanks. It's been good, thanks. A quieter, should we say, 6 months and being a professional athlete, as you guys know. So listen, I've enjoyed it. A lot more time with the kids and a quieter festive period than normal. And look, I've really enjoyed the downtime since hanging up the boots.
Yeah, has it been difficult? Has it been like a difficult process because that's what happens sometimes, isn't it? When you retire, you're like, right, I'm done. What am I going to do now? And you can overthink it a lot of the times.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was sort of a little bit fortunate. I was a little bit fortunate in regards to I didn't really play in my last sort of 6-7 months while I was in Glasgow. I had sort of a nagging injury that sort of led for the decision to be made that the risk versus reward scenario, knowing that I was retiring, meant that it might be best at that point to hang up the boots. And there's some talented youngsters pushing me out of the team anyway, so. I had a little bit more time to wrap my head around things and process what life as a non-athlete looked like. All that being said, I think naturally you guys know more than most, when you hang up your boots and you go from that real competitive environment day in, you're going to miss the competition. You're going to miss being out on the field. But listen, I've had more time with the kids and more time with the missus in a long time. So listen, it's been a difficult transition, but I've enjoyed it.
Right, we're going to get on to what makes you tick in a minute, but someone was late basically coming onto this podcast, and we have a coach every week, and this man, we've got a bloke that fell in love with rugby from a young age, and he's remained faithful since. He's recently received a PhD in Union from William Webb Ellis School of Excellence. Now, if someone loves rugby more than this guy, I really want to meet him. Dr. Richard Rees, how are you?
You've got issues, Thomas. You have, my friend. You have issues.
He definitely does.
Why were you late? You were just like practicing spinning a ball in the garden or something, were you?
I had my two daughters doing ball drills in the garden, mate. Yeah, you're right.
Doing Auckland grid. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. How are you? All right, lads?
Yeah.
Good. Cheers, Richie.
But Fez, have you met Richie before?
Yeah, well, we met in Belfast. I think we were covering a game together, and Richie turned up. Belfast, 1-2 degrees? I think it was middle of January, Baltic, and he turns up with a nice little jacket on and a shirt, no sign of a coat, no sign of a hat, gloves, nothing. And I was like, "You all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, bud, yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right." And 2 hours later, I was like, "You all right?" And he just kind of looked at me. I was like, "No, I'm not in good shape. I'm not in good shape here." We've good crack at that game, Ulster Cardiff game, I think it was. And I moved into the coaching transition, which is brilliant to see.
It was all about fashion that night, Tom. I'll give you a couple of hints sometimes. When Friday, actually, I'll give you a couple of hints then.
Oh yeah, I've seen you on Friday. Aren't we? We're popping up to Ireland, in and out. SAS. Richie, you've been at the Ospreys, London Irish, Cardiff, Dragons, Wales. A lot of experience. What sort of coaching style do you think you have? Is it a lot like Kenny Powers? Like, sort of ask the boys any questions? No,
Any
about
questions?
me.
This is about me. Any questions about me? No, I just think the way society's going now, Tom, it's you can't be dictatorial. It definitely depends on the group we've got, so probably the age demographic of the group and what they're used to previously, but it has changed a lot. The game moves quite quickly, and I think as soon as you're out of it for 12, 24 months, we played, 10, 15 years ago together, and, quite a bit has changed, and not just on the field, I think around the coaching front as well.
Well, it was a lot tougher back then, wasn't it? Whoa. We'll have to start on the win versus Leinster. How good was that?
Yeah, it was good. I suppose, we've had a rocky couple of months around, the boys being stuck in South Africa and a certain group having to fulfill the fixtures here against Toulouse and Harlequins. But you saw after this kick here, which Jared Slots, how much it meant to the boys. And I think it's full credit to them, mate. They executed very well that night. They probably dictated terms to Leinster, which I don't think many teams do, if I'm honest. And, happy for Jared to get that between the sticks, because he's had probably a bumpy old 6 months. But all we're on about now is just trying to get a little bit of momentum and positivity into the next couple of blocks that we've got.
Richie, just on that kick, obviously there's like over the top tries, a kick celebration. But as a former player, I've been there. Is it just a sense of relief from everybody in Cardiff that you've got a great victory over Leinster, but just it's been a rocky couple of months in Welsh rugby in general, and certain former players like Tom Shanklin bagging, where the next crop of Welsh players are going to come from. But was it more the reaction from the players, just a sense of relief that you get that win and you feel like you're going in the right direction?
Yeah, I think if I'm brutally honest, man, I think we haven't beat Leinster in 10 years. I think nearly 11 seasons.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. But yeah, Welsh rugby is where it is at the minute, and when we field a full strength side from a regional, from a club's perspective with us at Cardiff, we're not far off challenging the best out there. It's just, as we have been for the last 10 years, we lose 12 boys like that, and they are our best boys. And it's about having that middle block of players, that middle standard players that are there all season long, and they're the ones who sort of rely on the quality foreigners and your probably experienced pros. But just going back to this game from Saturday night, I think there was some big performances from some experienced players. But what I really liked about it, you had Max Llewellyn coming off the bench. He made a couple of key running lines, and the same of Evan Daniel, the hooker. Yeah. But it was good all day long. Lloyd Williams at 9 was one of his best games for a long time. So yeah, it was just good to see, mate, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
I feel like I've woken like a sleeping giant with my tweet. Like, it's all of a sudden the regions start performing. I'm not even allowed to say well done anymore before someone's tweeting me saying you don't rate the youngsters, or you've changed your tune. Thanks, Stevie. I thought Barclay was the run to the litter.
Yep. But Richie, just before we let Shanks go on that, just on that tweet that Shanks put out, like, he's not sure where the next crop are coming from, but you're obviously there. You see all these young guys, training most days. I'm sure you have a good insight into the academies as well within Wales. You always want to keep improving, but are you happy with what you're seeing? Are you happy that going forward, this, the boys that are going to make the next step up into the Welsh jersey are good enough to do so?
Yeah, well, ultimately, they've got to be. We've got to start in Wales from a bottom up rather than a top down process. We have to invest in the youth, the 18s, the 20s, and probably we haven't put the investment in that we should have done. We don't have the player numbers that the South Wales corridor, which is the Ospreys, Scarlets, us at the Blues, and us at Cardiff and the Dragons. That rugby playing population is the same as Dublin. It's the same as Leinster, So it's a big challenge. But Yeah, look, Nigel Walker's come in at the WIU. He's looking to particularly put a lot of emphasis on that beginning of the ladder, the bottom of the pyramid, and hopefully things work out. But there's definitely, individual quality comes through, mate, regardless of how much time they've invested. Ultimately, you'll have some good players through every now and again, but it's about fine-tuning them and getting those little tweaks so that they then can jump straight into the pro game, which is probably one of the hardest things to do. How do you bridge that gap between regional, probably academy, and then getting straight into that professional, match day 23 squad.
Just from Richie, obviously you touched on Jared Evans, obviously, and I know he came to the fore, obviously, with the kick that eventually, won you guys the game. But obviously, his trajectory and he burst onto the scene and was getting touted, rightly so, at the time as Wales' sort of next number 10. How happy you touched on the fact he's had a rocky sort of 6 months. How happy were you for him as an individual kicking that kick, and where do you feel like he can now go and get back to challenging for that Welsh squad? Because I know the ambition he has, obviously himself, but also watching him when he plays a game like he did on the weekend, he's got the full bag of tricks. He can play really well on the line. His kicking game obviously is incredibly strong, and he brings that place kicker as well. So just touching on him, how do you feel like he's going to be going, and what are we hoping to see from him in the next sort of 6-8 months?
Yeah, and I think Jared's probably gone from a little bit of a transition. From the last couple of years, he nearly started every game that he was available for, and we brought Rees back from Bath, who's probably a different type of player, and Jared, though, is one of the best attacking 10s for me in world rugby. His ability and appreciation to play at the line, his judgment of depth, width, how that affects his attacking kicking game, and the effectiveness is a short attacking kicking game is one of the best. He kicks off both feet, but Jared knows what he's got to work on. Has been told internationally. We speak to him daily, weekly. His individual development program is around probably his consistency in some of his longer kicks and his game management. But you'd much rather have him on your team rather than against you. And with him and Rees now both vying for that 10 jersey with us, it's probably the perfect combination at the minute.
I agree massively. You're a coach. You're a bloody good coach. Do you think there was a turning point in the season when everyone was in isolation and you played to lose, and you sort of had a reconnection, I think, with the fans, and you sort of found a style, really, and that's been carried on. We'll forget about Edinburgh. That was just a blip, but it seems to be positive. You seem to be playing a little bit wider, a little bit faster. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you're a very wise man, Tom, and we've spoken about this before. Yeah, look, ultimately that's the strength of this group that we've got. That's the playing bias that we've got in this group, and it's how we probably give them that freedom, but within a little bit of structure. And I think it was a perfect example on Saturday night against Leinster. We know Leinster. Everything for Leinster is about speed of ball in the contact area, and how do you take it off them if they've got it, and how do you keep it when you want it? But yeah, it probably suits our playing group, and where we struggle sometimes, or the majority of the time in the last couple of seasons, where sides manage to slow us down, and that's why we thought we needed another different style 10 probably in Rees Priestland, and to have the both of them there, it's definitely contrasting in playing styles, but it's definitely suiting and helping their performances on ours.
You mentioned a couple of boys who come off the bench, a couple of youngsters, but the good teams are the ones that make an impact off the bench, and loads of players came on and really added to that game. You look at Sam Moore, first touch, ran 40 metres, didn't he? Dylan Lewis, quality in the scrum, big turnover. All of a sudden, you're starting to look like a team that, is producing quality. And is it just that edge of confidence, that sort of top 5% really that you're missing?
Yeah, and that's the challenge, I suppose, how to get that consistency. All sides practically play the same way. They've all got similar strengths. It's how do you get that consistency at the top end, and to break into the top four, to be in the top four of that league consistently, month after month, year after year. That's probably the things that we have to work on as coaches, and that the players have to recognise putting importance on themselves. So if you stayed off Twitter, Thomas, and concentrated on the game,
there was no games at the weekend. I was bored. I think that's the most animated I've seen Die, the big man, in after a game. You know, there was proper celebrations. Normally he's got the poker face on, hasn't he? But he seemed to let it all go.
He did, yeah. He was clapping seal there in the box, wasn't he? But showed how much it meant to him, because he knew. We spoke before the game around the 10 years. We spoke about it in the week, and we spoke about, you know, it's no good the players playing well and us losing anymore. That's, you know, a
Dwayne Goodfield goes early there, doesn't he?
Yeah, see, there he is, the big guy. So but he's a happy man. He had a couple of beers in the changing room after, and shot off. But he's made a difference. He's probably put a marker down, said, look, this is what I want, so everyone jump on board or just jump off the bus. And he's a very honest guy. And that's all from players, coaches, pundits like yourself, Tom. That's all anybody wants, I suppose.
Just on one thing, I suppose I'll fill in as I should do for Barks, and I suppose Barks would be, I suppose Stevie as well would be the first to mention, obviously, your back row. I thought your pack in general were phenomenal on the weekend, but you look at someone like Josh Turnbull and how he played and the impact he had on the game. I think he was, 19 tackles. His ball carries were well into double figures as well. I think when you look at him, and then the likes of obviously Ellis Jenks returning, Boyd, both of them, like you've got a real quality of depth there. How important do you find going into those games that you're able to match? Because there's so many teams across the league where their back row is a real strength. You guys now seem to have that back row coming up through, and young guys as well that is able to challenge among the league. How important do you find sort of that particular part of your squad moving forward and going into games?
Yeah, it's huge. Tom, over the last 4 years, we've been the top for turnovers in the league, but it's how that filters back to what's really important in games. So yes, great to say having all these turnovers, but it's also really important then we have these link man for your transitions, defense to attack. And at the minute, I think we're getting better at that balance in the second row. I thought Boyd, he was outstanding in the first half on the weekend. He picked a dead leg in that first carry, which was 60 seconds into the game, got himself through to half time, got 4 key, really important turnovers for us. But even, the strength and depth, Jim Botham, Ellis Jenkins, Shane Lewis-Hughes, Josh Navidi still to come back. Obviously, we've just let Ollie go up on loan to Leicester. So, it's about having, what's really important to us as a team and how that suit, how we're going to set our game plan around it,
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks for taking time out of bedtime and jumping on, spending 10 minutes with us. Before you go, can you give us your Six Nations prediction? Like, who's going to win Wales Island this week? Do you think?
I think Ireland will win the tournament, if I'm honest. I think Ireland will do. I think because simply through the strength and depth that they've got a bit of a settled coaching team, settled playing squad. They've been playing regularly now, a lot of their top players. So, if I'm honest, I think if I was a betting man, which I'm not, Tom, you know the score. I definitely go Ireland, I think. So,
All right.
read into that.
Well, I will look forward to catching up with you on Friday. Will you be wearing shorts? Because I've not seen you out a pair of shorts yet, mate. No matter what the temperature, you got them on.
I'll text me later. I'll wear whatever you want me to wear, mate. Okay.
All right. Perfect. Balaclava. Right.
Cheers, Richie. Good to see you, buddy.
Cheers, mate. Thank you, buddy.
All the best.
There we are. I'll tell you who also had a good game, I thought, the weekend was Mike Adamson, referee. Got a couple of key decisions right. There was a turnover, wasn't there, like a couple of meters out from the line, and Leinster just quietly had a word with him, said you might want to check that. It was Jim Botham's hand coming in, wasn't it? Meter out, scoop the ball back, and then a yellow card, and that proved to be a big difference for Leinster.
I wasn't sure Shanks on the last penalty, to be honest with you.
The high tackle.
The last penalty. Yeah, the high tackle. I thought it was a little bit soft. I know we're trying to cut it out of the game, but that was the winning or losing of the game, like on that decision. And yet again, the week previous was in Europe, the Harlequins, who were Harlequins playing the Harlequins Cast game. Right at the end, there was another decision that went the home team's way. So I wasn't sure about that, but even still, spirited performance by Cardiff, and I was impressed by the way they've got much better over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they have to kick on though. That's the big thing, isn't it? You can't just have a win like this. It will mean nothing at the end of the season unless this is like a momentum changer for them. So,
for sure.
Anyway, 3 cheers for Cardiff. All right. Anyway, Tommy lad. We're going to chat Ulster now.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Now you're a winger, or we were a winger for some.
I know what's coming now,
including the British and Irish Lions and Glasgow and Scotland. What did you feel about the decision with Craig Gilroy's tackle?
Giving me the small issues to dive through. Obviously, we're seeing it now. Look, I suppose the easiest thing to say that everyone will agree on is, look, what happens to the player, unfortunately, is quite obviously horrendous. I think no one can watch that and not worry about the individual. And the position he himself and his body finds himself in. Like, that's a nasty, nasty collision. Do I think for a second that Craig Gilroy meant to do that? Not in a million years. And I understand the referee's perspective in regards to there is mitigation. Unfortunately, he is falling. But the game going the way it is, and the protection, and what we're really trying to do with the new laws and their implementation is we're trying to just create as safe an environment as we can for the players. So when you look at it in that context, you can completely understand why the fallout after the game was maybe that it should have been a red and not a yellow. As I said, there is mitigation involved, and I don't think there was anything in Craig's mind and Gilroy's mind that he was going to be reckless. I just think by the nature of protecting players and steering away from that, we have to look at the incident itself, and you're looking at that as a red card, unfortunately.
I don't want to speak for you, Stevie, but we were in comms doing it, and I mean, I was mostly looking at the mitigating factors, so I was concentrating on how low Tom Rogers was his knee touching the ground, and I think Craig Gilroy just wraps too late. He tries to wrap too late. So by the time he's made the tackle, his arm isn't up high enough. It's down by the side, the tackle he's trying to get away from. And I totally agree with you. Like Tommy, I don't think there's an intent there to take his head off, but he just gets himself in a bit of a pickle because that's what happens in rugby. As much as instinctively you've got the ball in hand, you change direction, you do the same defensively as well. So, and I think after going down to half time, you actually get a bit of time to look it through on your phone and look at the replays. And it was a red card, and he is going to be cited.
Shanks, you're talking rubbish. You were looking through Twitter to see what they were saying.
I was looking at my phone, slow-mo like that.
Straight away, you said it was a red card. Then you can back up the commentary at half time. You said it was a yellow card, and then at full time, you said it was back to a red card. So what is it?
Can't say, mate. I could not have been any clearer at halftime that it was a red card, Stevie. And you said
Stevie, what are you
card.
saying?
He said it's yellow, mate, and he didn't change his mind. He's horrible. Yeah. He's horrible.
I think, watching that clip of the tackle, Craig Gilroy was actually backpedaling, a yard before he makes contact. So he was actually retreating, and then he just makes a decision to come up. I actually don't think Craig, there was any force at all. It almost was like he stood there and the player ran straight into him, and it made it look a hell of a lot worse than it maybe was. So for me personally, I think there is mitigation there, and that's a yellow card. Unfortunately, the player...
I think that's where the difference comes in, isn't it? It's because there is that mitigation, so you're right.
Yeah. And everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody's going to say it's a yellow card, red card, or whatever, but it's direct contact to the head, and that's what we got to stamp out of the game. Simple as that. There's
a really good battle going on at the moment at scrum half, Stevie. Doak and Tony. Who's winning this battle at the moment?
Geez, I tell you what, Nathan Doak is playing some super rugby. I think when he first got his first couple of caps for Ulster, I was like, oh, he's a little bit lethargic to the breakdown. He's just kind of in cruise control the whole time. And I don't know, since Cooney got injured, the pace that he's playing with, this is called the Doak poke, as Robbo alluded to in commentary, and the wee chip off for Craig Gilroy to score a nice try. It was created by Billy Burns down the short side. But Nathan Doak is playing with a lot of confidence. And for me, even in the big games, even against Claremont, he was mixing it with the best. So it's going to be a big year for Nathan Doak. And with doubts still over John Cooney, where he's going to be at the end of next season, I think Nathan Doak's future is very, very bright for the next 4 or 5 years. And believe it or not, he signed a 4-year deal. Who signs a 4-year deal these days? 4 years.
Doakey.
Nathan Doak. Yeah.
Well, that'll be getting
4
ripped
years.
off halfway through, Stevie. That'll be getting ripped off halfway through, mate.
4-year
I
deal
agree.
with an option for the 5th.
I think everyone keeps going back to it, but I think that's what really hits you when you watch Nathan Doak play, is the maturity he plays with. Like you forget he's actually so young in his career, and he's not played that many games, because you look back on that clip there with the Billy Burns break and then the eventual Gilroy try. 9 times out of 10, people would try and pick that ball up. And maybe it's just, he wasn't thinking about it too much, but the calmness he has in that moment to just go, no, I'm not going to try and pick it up and recycle the ball. I'm just going to knock it forward. I can kick it forward. Lovely dink. It's bits and pieces around that game that just really make you sit back and go, wow, this kid is definitely already light years ahead of most at his age category.
They're like French scrum halves, aren't they, in Ulster at the moment? Because they all kick at goal as well. That's such a French thing, really. You scrum halves that kick.
That takes a lot of pressure off Billy Burns, because Billy Burns' goal kicking hasn't been that good in recent years. And I know we have chatted about it before on here. It sort of relieves a bit of pressure on him, and he can get on with his own game. So, what about Scarlet Shanks?
They had more opportunities than Ulster. They broke the line more times. They just couldn't finish it for whatever reason. There was Tom Rogers actually, with that tackle, creates a really good break down the left-hand side, and the ball's thrown back inside and it's intercepted. Tyler Morgan goes through another time and ends up fluffing it, really. There was space on the left. So I think now, in one way, it's pleasing that teams create space and create opportunities. Other way, though, on the other hand, it's disappointing that they can't finish them, because they were in that game. And I think you saw it at the end, didn't you, on Dwayne Peel's reaction after. It was, he was gutted. He was really gutted, because they were in that game all the way. But that last sort of 5-10%, the last 20, it just started to slip away from him. And
that's been the same. That's been the same the last couple of weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And the only way you get over that, mate, is by winning, and then it starts to become a habit. It's confidence. It's that last sort of 5-10% that you need from teams. I tell you what I couldn't get over was Dwayne Vermeulen's feet.
My goodness!
Honestly,
my days.
They're about that wide and webbed.
Shaquille O'Neal's.
It's freezing. Tommy was freezing, right? He just turns up with no socks on, just barefoot, like frostbite everywhere, setting in, and just didn't care.
Mate, he's a hardy individual. Look at him, mate. I mean, like that guy is not. That guy's not fearful of anything.
Do you remember the coldest game you boys ever played in?
Yes.
Have you ever?
Yes.
You're not allowed to wear skins, are you? You are now.
Yes, I can remember it for sure.
We had a game. We had a game against 2 games actually back to back. We had one year was La Rochelle. I'm trying to remember who the other one. I was Leon. That's what it was. It's Leon at home, and it was in December time, and it's the coldest I have ever been, and I mean properly freezing. At one point, we had Callum Gibbons, our back row at the time, was in the sin bin 10 minutes leading up to half time, and there's a shot of him sitting on the bench, and his whole body is vibrating to the point where the chair's actually moving. And they had a penalty on the stroke of half time, and it was either us or them had an injury down, and he was being attended to on the field. And it was one of these ones, was a really long stoppage. And I remember specifically Ryan Wilson going up to to the referee and saying, "We will give them the 3 points if you just let us go inside." And the referee couldn't do it. It was that cold. Boys were chattering. And honestly, I've never seen a bunch of individuals. We had no kit. We didn't have spare kit to change into at halftime. We all went in thinking we were getting new strips. We didn't. I've never seen so many individuals just go into the showers in their kit and warm up with a hot shower.
Oh, no. I think Ravenhill was the coldest I played at back in the day. It was like ice. It was like the middle of winter, and you had to wear like molded boots because it was so hard. Paul Wallace had a really bad fractured ankle. I don't know if you might remember. You might have been ball boy or something, Stevie. I don't know.
No, there's loads of cold days in Belfast. But what do you call the kicking coach for Harlequins, or is he skills coach? The Kiwi out half.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick Evans.
Nick Evans. Yeah. So we were playing, and there was a temporary stand down in the corner. You maybe remember it, Tommy. And the temporary stand blew over, and like there's fucking things flying everywhere. It was like a tornado. It just hit Belfast. And Nick Evans was standing in the middle of the pitch, and they were wrapping one of those silver sheets around him because he'd started, like, pneumonia had started to kick in, like, and like they were bringing him down the pitch, and Nick, it was absolutely horrific. And we still finished the game. Like, you just wouldn't do that these days. Nuts.
No, nuts.
Lads, we've got our South African correspondent, expert online now. Bobby Skinstad, how are you? Looking marvellous, as always.
I'm good, thanks, Shanks. How are you? Hello, Ferry. Hi, Tommy. How are you guys?
Hello, sir.
Hi, Bobby.
Yeah, we're all good. We're just talking
Sorry,
about the cold.
My lighting's not amazing, but it's because I've been wrapped up inside all day because it's too cold for me. You
need to get one of these, Bobby.
Don't worry, I want to. My social media game. I'm going to write you an email and get some tips from my social media.
I'm with you. I need to update. I'm not at the ring.
Stevie's just joined OnlyFans, but it's the nice one. It's the classy pics.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey Bob, we've had another South African derby at the weekend. We get quite a lot of them at the moment.
Yeah, we are. Look, I mean, I've got to say this: it's great to see the guys playing each other. I'd like to see it interspersed with other games. You know what it's like? You play Stormers one week, Sharks the next, Stormers the next week, and then you feel it as if you get sort of same as. But the nice thing is about these South African derbies is that the guys have actually changed it up a bit. They've been playing some decent rugby, passing the ball, offloading, creating some tries and some opportunities that we didn't see when they were snuffed out in the first couple of weeks. So I'm pleased to see it. I look forward to them doing the same kind of play in this kind of cold, which I think will be a problem. Or the teams from here in the UK out in South Africa in that kind of heat, because it was 39 degrees in Durban when they played on the weekend. And you can imagine with the humidity, I mean, it's like trying to catch a bar of soap. So well done to them for hanging on to the ball when it was passed.
Who do you think's the form team at the moment in South Africa? I mean, initially I thought it was going to be the Bulls, and then I changed my mind a lot about stuff, Bob. Then I think it's going to be the Stormers. Well, who do you think? Who's the best one? Do you think?
I think Bulls remains a good call, probably closely followed by Sharks. The Sharks have got too much class. I mean, when the Springboks are back, they're a tough team to beat. And Lukhanyo I don't know what you think as a guy who played in the backline, but he's got real class, and he just adds a nice level. Yeah, exactly. He just adds a nice level of leadership and calm to a team which has got a lot of world-class players, but haven't spent that much time together. The South African season was fractured a bit by the internationals, and because of that, these guys I think they've had 3 games where all the Springboks are back and playing, which makes a massive difference. I mean, they absolutely annihilated the Stormers pack this weekend, with Kitsoff at skipper and playing. Oxenchair, who's sort of the new kid on the block for the Springboks, just delivered a masterclass in how to scrum. And because of that, they stayed in the game. I mean, they had 3 yellow cards, and they should have lost the game to a sort of a resurgent Stormers, but they managed to stay into it because of the pack. So
well, we were
that order.
Bobby, good to see you again, mate. We were chatting to Dwayne Vermeulen after the game there, after the Ulster game. Firstly, he's an absolute beast of a man, huge man. But we asked him about the pace and the tempo of the way he's playing for Ulster in the URC, and he was like, honestly, I can't believe it. It's just so fast. It's not what I'm used to. It's not lots of scrummaging, mauling, chasing kicks. Do you think the South African teams at the minute are going to be able to cope with, once they play Ulster, Leinster, Scarlets? Are they going to be able to cope with the pace that they play at?
Well, first of all, you're 100% right. Dwayne is an absolute beast of a man. He's a monster, and he's such a
Stevie
good guy.
got on his tiptoes when he came close.
That takes a lot for Stevie to say as well.
Yeah, exactly. And Stevie's a unit anyway. So,
thanks, Bob.
But the not the long driving champion on the golf course, but that's a timing thing. Stevie, we'll get your muscles up. I think you're right. I think the pace is quicker, and I think the guys are, they're defining counter-attacking play. I mean, they're using the short side exceptionally well. We saw a couple of opportunities taken by Ulster, which in South African rugby now would be sort of snuffed out. I think they wouldn't be taken that quickly, so they're going to have their speed game on. In terms of the individuals, I think they're big enough, strong enough, fast enough. Is the coaching at the same level? I think so. I mean, you got Jake White heading up the Bulls. They got a younger or less experienced coaching setup at all three of the others, and Lions, Sharks, and Stormers. But you can't say that Jake White hasn't got experience as a coach. So for me, it's a combination. It's actually, I think they've got the physical presence and the speed and the skill. It's just, do they coach them like that? Will they play like that? Look, if they don't, they're going to get smashed, and they're going to have to counter it pretty quickly.
Bobby, how are you? Sir?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Just from me, touching on from Stevie's point, I think I've always been interested and wondered, because I have obviously the playing perspective on it, but what do you think on your perspective? Is it harder for the teams from the Northern Hemisphere to travel down to South Africa and play, or is it harder for the South Africans to come up and play in the Northern Hemisphere, based on obviously there's a multitude of different factors that come into play? You've just mentioned the humidity, the heat in which the teams going, across and down to South Africa have to deal with. I've dealt with obviously the altitude before playing at the Cheetahs, which is incredibly difficult to play with. But then on the flip side, you naturally have the really ice cold conditions you can have up here. It has tended to be, because of unfortunate things with the pandemic, it's been really large cycles that the South African teams have had to go through when they've come up here. So that's a whole new set of challenges. Where do you see, in terms of the difficulty, do you see it more difficult from one way to the other, or do you think there's parity between the two?
No, look, it's a great question, because I think there is a bit of parity. It just depends. You're going to have there's going to be a little bit of luck on each season. Depends on sort of the roster or schedule post-COVID is the one thing. The other thing is, in tourism, they talk about shoulder seasons. And some of these games are being played in the shoulder season. And often the shoulder season, the hotel prices are better, but the weather's not as bad. It hasn't got super cold yet, or it hasn't got super hot yet. And a couple of these games are being played in that sort of window period. And I think it's going to benefit the South African teams coming over here, where it's slightly milder. I mean, it doesn't get this cold in South Africa. When you go to South Africa and you play, you guys have gone to South Africa in the end of season tours primarily, and in Super Rugby, we were all Southern Hemisphere teams, so it didn't matter. But that time of year, June, July, even August for the Lions, it's cold in South Africa, so it's okay. It's and South Africa cold, it's 20 degrees. Durban, like I said, Durban this weekend was 39 degrees Celsius. I mean, that's going to be a shocker.
Oh, yeah.
My pasty skin, that is not good.
Yeah,
Shanks, that head of yours, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm all right, mate. European parents, I'm fine.
Yeah, absolutely fine. You got one of those nice little round cricket hats. You're not allowed that on in the backline.
Now, the umbrella hat.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I make that point is that I was at the Sharks, and Dick Meir was the coach at the time, and we woke up at sort of 4:45, got to the training field and were on the training field starting with warm-up drills at 6 because it was the coolest time of the day, just around sort of just after dawn, and that was staying around 25 degrees. So, I think that the guys are going to get a bit of a shock. They'll get used to it within a year. It'll be easy. But, I think the South African teams are rubbing their hands in glee and hoping that that might give them an advantage and they can snaffle back some of those points they need to head towards the top of the table.
But just on that humidity though, like Bobby, we were working on the Benetton game, that Rainbow Cup game with the Bulls, and like they seemed to struggle more with the humidity and the heat and the slippery ball than actually Benetton did that day. So I'm wondering, do you cancel each other out a little bit along the way?
That's what I'm trying to say, is that there's going to be things that affect both teams. To be honest, on that Benetton, I'm not sure the Bulls actually came out. They had these cardboard cutouts of the Bulls who were on the field. They certainly weren't the team that we watched in the domestic competition in South Africa. I mean, Benetton ran riot with them, In fact, I think half the Benetton team got contracts all over the rest of Europe after that. And they were outstanding. But you're right, and I think the Bulls, will feel that they're going to have to perform a lot better than that when they come out here. We've seen some of it. I felt that the Sharks were given a bit of a lesson in Glasgow, but that was due to the pace of play. You mentioned it earlier, Stevie. That's it wasn't too cold, it wasn't too hot, and you got to get out there and play rugby, but you got to play it well as well.
Mm-hmm.
So do you, from your perspective then, do you expect when they start to filter back into the grander league as we look at it, do you expect a real shift in the table then when the South Africans join the rest of the URC, or do you think there's probably too much at this point to make up?
No, I think there'll be a realignment. I mean, I think they are behind the 8 ball. I mean, you can't sort of just go in and say you're going to win every game. But I was looking at the table earlier today, and I mean, I think for the Sharks to get from 10th to catch up with the Ospreys is 10 points, and they've got 3 games in hand. So it's if that goes okay for them and they manage to catch them up, they're equal with the Ospreys after 3 games. And remember, 2 of those are in South Africa that they're comfortable. They'll have a pop at the Lions, and they should win another home game. They're hoping to, or would be hoping to. And one of those will be hosting an overseas team. So if you think to yourself, you pick up 75% of that, you're in the top half of the table. Yeah, you're top third of the table, actually. Yeah.
Boy, you're a former South African rugby player, World Cup winner. Do you get excited by the Six Nations like the rest of us? You live in the UK. I think, are you still living in the UK?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Not been deported yet. But do you get swept up? Do you get swept up in the excitement of it?
I'll have you know, Shanks, I am a card-carrying Irish passport holder. Stevie,
yes.
Exactly. We carry the same passport. Look at us. I mean, we brothers from another mother. No, I get super excited. In fact, remember, I grew up in South Africa during apartheid. So what was the 5 Nations was the only international rugby we could watch. So I mean, I grew up and had contraband videotapes still in the old Betamax smuggled to me from my aunts teaching at international schools on rugby. Don't worry, it wasn't any other form of contraband.
Check him.
Yeah, but literally, I grew up on that kind of rugby, so I get super excited. I'm going to all the games that I can. I'm at Twickenham as soon as they get here. I think if I'd known more about what was happening with COVID, I probably would have scheduled a family trip out to watch a game away from home as well.
So who's your prediction then to win the tournament? Who's your favourite? Ireland. Yeah, we had Richie Rees, a Cardiff coach, on, say the same thing. So
Stevie's
all the pressure on Ireland.
Ireland are out training in Portugal. I think I saw some reports this week. I don't know. They've just. I'm seeing some quality from the players in the URC and around the traps that I think if they can do what they did to the All Blacks and Australia and that as a team last year when they didn't have every single person that they want, and Farrell said as much. Now a couple of guys have recovered and come back. I think they've got a real good chance, to use this as a foundation for going towards a World Cup even. So they'll be sort of going for number one.
There we are. Ireland favourites for the Six Nations. Maybe not the World Cup next year. Bobby Skinstad, legend, mate. Thank you for coming on.
No worries,
Cheers,
guys.
Bobby.
Great to see you all.
Thanks very much, man.
See you soon,
Chat
mate.
soon, Bobby.
See you soon, mate. Love
Top
all
lads.
the time.
Yeah.
Mate,
I need to find out what moisturizer he uses, because I know we have chatted about this, but that's a serious skin regime he's got going on.
Imagine him smelling like Ralph Lauren Polo Sport, something crisp like that. Right, well, let's get on to the Scottish teams, Tommy. A very good win for Glasgow over in Connacht.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
Yeah, impressive. Very impressive. Sports ground, Stevie, and you both know, it's a tough place to go. But from the word go, I felt like Glasgow seemed to be really accurate in what they were trying to do. It was quite clear they were going after the physical battle, trying to dominate collisions, create quick ball. Obviously, Rufus crossing the try line within a couple of minutes. I noticed as well, I think a statistic, Cahill Ford at 10 for Connacht made 16 tackles, I think. And that just showed you what Glasgow's game plan was. They were going to go direct. They were going to target, the debutant. I think fair play to him. I think he made all but one of them. So he did well, but Glasgow had real intent. They moved the ball well. A really good victory for them on the road. After, obviously, they'll be disappointed in terms of their European last couple of games for them. But yeah, very impressive in a difficult place to go. So fair play to them.
It's 20 points to all. It's 20 points to all after 60 minutes. They got themselves back into it. Just seeing some of the tries there, Stein goes through way too easy for me there. That's just hands. That's like a try from the 70s, hips and hands. I think it's Tom Farrell just gets himself in a massive pickle.
I think I cut him some slack. I think he went off just after that with an injury, didn't he? I think he was injured at that point in time, which maybe explains why the defensive line sort of looked the way it did for Kyle's try, because I think you're right in what you said. It was far too easy. But Glasgow, as you said, it was very close at a certain point in the game, and a couple of soft scores towards the end sort of folded Connacht over, and Andy Friend was quite scathing in his review of that.
Tuipulotu had another good game. Do you think he's put his hand up to start in that opening game for Scotland? Because you're not necessarily would think he was going to start because he played, and normally you don't play 2 weeks before a game if you're going to be one of those sort of automatic selections. Do you think he's chucked his hat into the ring?
Well, I think obviously you get the league as much as I have this year. I think he's been impressive from day one. I think he's certainly chucked his hat into the ring. I don't know whether it would be in a starting spot because I think Gregor and most head coaches would be honest enough, and they've probably built up relationships and they have their lineups sort of embedded in the way they want to play. So I think it would be a bit much for maybe to throw him into a starting spot. But I definitely think he's thrown his hat in the ring to be involved in some capacity, whether that be from week one or whether that be further down the line. But it'll be an interesting selection. I think he's a wonderful player and adds a completely different dimension.
I got on my script here, Connacht down to the bare bones, and that's obviously because Gav Muldoon from Premier Sport has written it. Do you agree with that, Stevie?
Yeah, definitely. I feel a little bit sorry for the lads at Connacht, especially in the front row, big games and struggling. They held up well that Stade Francais game. The amount of young fellas that got given a game and then had to back it up against a Glasgow side that was a lot stronger than I expected to travel over. So, yeah, I think it's hard for Connacht just with the amount of players that they're missing. But they're going all right in both competitions, and there's rumours floating around, that Mac Hansen might be starting for Ireland this weekend. So that would be a big plus for Connacht, wouldn't it?
Do you say Ireland or Australia?
Correct.
Okay, just checking. I wasn't sure. It's the earphone. But right, Ospreys.
Just before that, we move on. Gav Muldoon, did he not tell us that it was Bernard Jackman that had a conversation with him in Australia and managed to get him a flight over to Ireland? And Bernard Jackman's the man that's made his international career. Did you hear this?
True? Is it true?
Well, so Gav Muldoon tells me, but we'll find out soon enough, I'm sure.
He's one-eyed, mate. He's so biased. Ospreys, Edinburgh. Now, Mike Blair says after the game that Edinburgh didn't deserve to win that. Do you agree with that statement, Tommy?
Geez, it's a difficult one. I think if Mike said it, then in a way it has to be true. Like if that's his view on it, I think. Fair play to Ospreys. I thought they battled back really, really well. Kept themselves in the game. Obviously with the yellow card at one point as well. I think they showed real character. I think we've already mentioned it earlier in the program. The emotion on Toby Booth's face. It clearly has been a heightened emotional period for everyone at the club, and that means a lot. And I think as well the fact that Edinburgh have been playing so well this season. And performing the way they have, that is that's not to be underestimated. What an impact that will have on the Ospreys as a squad. Do I think that they deserve to lose the game? I think it's maybe taking a little bit of credit away from Ospreys and how they stuck in that fight. But Ospreys will be better for it.
Let's listen to Toby Booth.
Toby, we saw at the end there what that win meant to the players. What does it mean to you?
Yeah. It means quite a lot, really, because we've, as a group, we've gone through quite a lot in the last couple of months. So I think that's a great sign-off for what has been a very, very difficult and emotional block for everyone that's been involved with the club. It's great that it's probably on Ivan's birthday, which is a lovely thing for him. And, that sort of performance represented him, I thought.
Very emotional. It looked like he was going to go, didn't he? I only get like that, like on the way back from somewhere like Hong Kong Sevens and like watching A Star Is Born or something like that on the plane. And I'm
the fear, you mean?
I'm like, just what's going on? But it was obviously a real emotional time for him. And you mentioned Ivan Phillips' his birthday, and I suppose that what that meant to the squad and how they performed. But the Ospreys, they've had a couple of mess ups, but they've beaten Ulster, they've beaten Munster, they've been top of the table, Edinburgh, and they've done it with Stephen Myler at 10, which the Gareth Anscombe is available and fit. Yeah.
Well, what's your thoughts on it, Shanks? What's your thoughts on it, Shanks? And I know we've had this conversation a couple of times about Gareth Anscombe, and we've went back and forth about it's about him getting game time and giving him a little shot here, and obviously he needs to be bled back into the squad slowly, but at the same time, like Myler is playing better at 10 than Anscombe is, even when he gets given an opportunity. And when I was over in Wales watching the Ospreys, Gareth Anscombe came on at fullback in the game, which was even more peculiar. So it's an argument that still hasn't been settled yet, has it?
It's like you want to give him game time, but Toby Booth thinks they stand a better chance of winning, which is the most important thing at the moment for them, with Myler at 10. And they are winning. They've won 3 big games, the 3 that I mentioned. They're big games against quality opposition. So seem to be doing well. So another good win for the Ospreys without actually playing too much again. I still think they're just performing at a level. They've got a lot more to come. I believe that they're not blowing teams away, but they know how to grind out wins. So slightly disappointing, I think, on an Edinburgh point of view, but really good for the Ospreys and Welsh rugby. It seems like, again, my tweet has done its job. So you're welcome. Right, Tommy, I know you watch the show every week. We have a segment called Presenter's Choice. So we get a choice of a topic to talk about. And
a topic to talk about.
Okay. Well, I think we'll go with best Six Nations event. No. Things you hate most about John Barclay. Right. This is for you, Tommy. This is for what do you hate most about him?
His ability, the freebies, mate. He seems to be getting.
He's relentless, isn't he?
He was in. What was he? I think I saw on his Instagram. He was in Miami recently. I think drinking.
He just comes out in waves.
Top shelf whiskey. I mean, he's always Gleneagles. I think he lives at Gleneagles more than he does in his manor in Edinburgh. Just bless him. Like it's all just complete jealousy from my perspective. But yeah, we'll moves from jealousy to hatred. I think when you see Miami trips coming in there.
Is it all for show though, Tommy? Is it all for show with John Barclay?
Listen, you two spend more time with him than I do, so you see him every week. You tell me if it's all facade or not. I'm not delving into that.
I'll tell you one thing you should never do is shave again. I saw a couple of photos this week of a clean shaven shave. No way.
You look like a skeleton.
Looks gaunt, doesn't he?
Oh, and his chin looks like it's 3 times the size.
I much prefer him with the beard or the mask, whatever you want to call it. You know,
John has a strong jaw.
It's very strong. Yeah. There's a lot we hate about John, but there's a little bit of resentment there as well. You know, he's got his own hair, we think, and a lovely beard and a happy home life. So John Barclay seems to be winning. Well done. Right. Now to finish, it's been a long one. This Six Nations chat. Opening weekend. Tommy, it's the Calcutta Cup. Can Scotland retain it?
Yes, they definitely can. I think people are naturally going to think I'm leaning towards my obvious Scottish bias, but I think they've got an incredibly good chance. I think, truthfully, you probably look at that squad being the more settled, and you probably put them as favourites, to be quite honest, at Murrayfield, packed house again. Relatively, as I said, settled squad. I don't see why the trophy can't remain in Scotland for another year at least.
And then who do you think is going to win the tournament? Who's your favourite?
Well, I mean, Stevie would like me to make it 3 out of 3 and say Ireland, but I think, and people are obviously going to think I'm naturally going to go to Scotland. I think what I like about it is the autumn.
No, they won't, mate. No, they won't.
The autumn set up what I think will be a great tournament because most of the home nations performed incredibly well against the Southern Hemisphere counterparts. I think France, if they get things right, though, if France get things right with Dupont being the player he is and the impact he has in the game, with the depth they have around their squad, I think France, for me, right now, top the scale.
Okay, France is going to beat Italy, there's no doubt about that, on the weekend, which leaves us with Ireland-Wales. Ireland, massive favourites, Steve, aren't they?
Yeah, they're massive favourites. Always gamble responsibly, but with Ladbrokes at the minute, they are 14-point favourites with Ireland versus Wales. Like 14 points, first test match of the Six Nations. I think that's very, very generous. Ireland were third favourites for the tournament only a couple of days ago. So, yeah, for me, I think Ireland are going to pull out all the stops, put in a good performance, and, get their tournament off and running. Because, as you know, Shanks and Tommy, it's all about getting a little bit of momentum in the tournament. And I fancy Ireland. I'm going to agree with some of the other people that have been on here. I fancy Ireland to win the whole thing, to be honest with you, Tom.
Some of the experts. Yeah, I think Ireland will win this weekend against Wales. I'm going France, though. I think the size of their squad, players they've got, I think this could be their year. They've got a couple of the big teams, I think, at home as well. So that's my prediction. If you are betting, when the fun stops, stop. You've got to say that. And that brings us to the end of this show, lads. Tommy Seymour, Stephen Ferris, thank you very much. Don't forget, every game is live on Premier Sports. It's the only place to see it. Subscribe, watch, enjoy, and we'll see you soon. Bye.